Arraignment is expected Monday for an Oceanside high school teacher accused of having a sexual relationship with one of her students, and school sex abuse cases have cropped up in other parts of the country as well. Here to talk about this alarming issue and what can be expected in court on Monday is former prosecutor Anna Young. Good morning. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you, Tom. Thank you.
Very interesting case out of Oceanside.
Yes. Yes.
What might we expect to see out of this case?
Okay, so my understanding of what's going on is that Kelly Watson is a 34-year-old teacher, and she teaches special education. She also teaches boys who are emotionally abused or have some emotional problems. My understanding is that she developed a relationship with a 17-year-old boy, not at the time that she was teaching him, but when she changed schools to Oceanside, some kind of relationship forged. So what's going to happen on Monday is she's going to be facing charges of potential statutory rape and oral copulation with a minor. Okay,
and this was an underage student.
Yes, he
no
was
longer
17.
at the same school as the teacher.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. My understanding is that she met him when she taught at New Haven, which is a residential school for emotionally disturbed boys.
Okay.
And then when she transferred to Oceanside, that's when they forged the relationship.
This is a big issue because a teacher is supposed to be a person of trust, someone who is there, especially in this case where she was dealing with special needs children, and she obviously overstepped her boundaries. It's interesting because we look at the state of Texas where another teacher there was accused of having group sex with a bunch of students, but these students were legal age. They were 18 years old.
Yes, and that's the interesting thing, Tom, because in Texas, Brittany Collips just got convicted yesterday, and she was sentenced to 5 years in prison because the boys that she had sex with in Texas were 18 years old. Legally, they could consent, but in Texas, there's a law that states educators cannot have sexual relations with children or students who are enrolled in the same school that they teach at. Again,
that issue of trust, I guess, is the reason behind that.
Correct. The principle of trust, being in a position of power, potential exploitation issues. Absolutely.
Okay, very strange thing. Is there a double standard here? Because sometimes, you know, and I know legally there's not a double standard. If you're an adult, whether you're male or female, it doesn't matter. You're still guilty if you've committed these crimes of statutory rape and what other charges may be against you. But it seems in society, if it's a female teacher and a male student, there's this almost more of a forgiving nature towards that type of incident as opposed to the teacher being a male.
I agree with you, and I think that in society there really is a double standard, because if you think about it, when it's a female teacher with a male student, all the boys are high-fiving each other, saying good job, pat on the back. But if it's a male teacher and a female student, then it's throw the book at them. He was in a position of exploitation. He took advantage of her. So absolutely, I think there is that double standard associated with female teacher versus male teacher. And remember that case in Florida, Deborah LaFave, very attractive female teacher. Everyone was talking about how her punishment was very light. It was like a slap on the wrist. I think she had house arrest and 7 years probation.
Right.
So,
and if that had been a male teacher, it probably would have been a So sometimes that double standard you're saying sometimes does crop into the legal realm as well.
Sometimes I do believe so. I think that should it not? But I do think that sometimes when you look at the nature of the conduct and then the female versus male, sometimes
what happens in this case? Because there was a case out of Florida, another case, where a teacher was accused of having sex with one of the students. It turned out through the investigation those were false accusations.
Right.
That's another reason, of course, why the innocent before proven guilty is so important, because sometimes, students might not like a teacher and we're going to take that teacher down.
Absolutely, and I think that's a really good point that you raised, because you have to look at the evidence. In the Texas case, for instance, with Miss Collips, there was a videotape. Okay, you don't get as strong as that. But in other cases, you have to think, okay, is it he said, she said? Is there eyewitness testimony? Is there DNA test evidence? Is there physical evidence? And all of those factors play into consideration as to the strength of the prosecutor's case. For instance, I handled a case where it was a female teacher and a male student. That case, there was no videotape. There's no physical evidence, no eyewitness testimony. That, in comparison to what happened in Texas, we're talking about apples and oranges here.
But how strong is that he said, she said type of scenario? If the victim is distraught and has a very strong accusation, are there cases where the prosecution will win that case just based on her testimony?
It would really depend upon the facts of each case, and it depends upon whether the jury believes if the victim is credible. Can they talk about specific instances? Are there particularized facts that they can point to? Does the overall essence look like someone's telling the truth versus someone who's very vague and doesn't really want to necessarily talk about it or can't even really give specific facts? So it's a very fine line between, is this person telling the truth or is he not, or is she not?
Do you find also in these cases that once one accusation comes out against a teacher, that oftentimes there are more incidents of that same type of behavior? More victims out there type of thing?
Sometimes that could potentially happen in terms of the domino effect. I mean, with Jerry Sandusky, one boy came out and then all of a sudden it was a slippery slope, and then all these victims were coming out of the woodwork saying, you know what, this is what happened to me, he did this to me. So I think that when one victim comes forward, potentially if it is a pattern, other victims can very well come forward as well.
I am a parent. I've got kids in school. It's very concerning to people like me.
Right.
What do parents do?
You know, I think that parents, obviously it's extremely traumatizing for them because they start sometimes blaming themselves. Maybe I could have avoided this. For instance, in that Sandusky case, how could I let my son spend the night at Coach Sandusky's house?
Yeah.
How could I have entrusted him to take care of my son? And I think it's a very traumatizing and a very taxing situation and emotional situation for the parents. Absolutely.
Tough go. Anna Yum, thank you so much. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
And of course, this court case resumes on Monday.
Yes,
okay.
Monday for arraignment.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.